Hello pandas. The last minimalism video was pretty fun, but after I determined everything that I was going to get rid of, I ran into a logical problem, which was what am I supposed to do with it all? So I figured I would follow that one up with what I am calling Minimalism Lifestyle Tips Volume 2, Top 5 Do's and Don'ts of Donating when Downsizing and Decluttering. Now these are in no particular order, and I would like to start with the disclaimer that this is my personal list, so what does and doesn't work for me may not necessarily work or not work for you. For the first one on the do list, because I think this is a great place to start once you've decided on all of the things that you no longer wish to own, definitely do sell everything that you can. Now, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that a bunch of the stuff you've decided you don't need anymore still has value to other people and you could get some money for it. And that's why I think this is a great way to start, is because when you're selling these larger and more valuable items, you get that immediate reward of like having some cash back in your pocket. So you can feel good about eliminating all of these things because of that advantage. But here are some of my tips to actually getting the most out of it and getting the job done. Now, you'll probably list these things on websites like Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist or Garage Sale or Let Go, or I don't know, there's so many of them now, whichever one's most popular in your area. But personally, I don't list anything that I can't sell for at least $10, with the rare exception, but that's my general rule because it's just not worth the time. And especially on Facebook Marketplace, you're going to get a lot of calls and it'll eat up more time than you think if you've never done this before. If you have done this before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The next tip, and this is more about the mindset, you need to price things to move. Because if you're trying to maximize your profit, although that's fair to want to do, it'll take away from the real intent here. And you need to get these things gone. The money is just kind of a bonus. Think of it a bit like a yard sale mentality. If you don't price things to move, they might not sell, and then you're still stuck with it. So, fire sale, get it gone. And related to that, once you put something up, it's got good pictures, it's well lit, the item is clean, there's not a whole bunch of junk in the background, and it's still not moving, give it a week, maybe 2 weeks. I feel like a week is enough, and then drop the price, and then give it another week, drop the price again. If it's not moving, well, it might just be a bad time. Just keep in mind that you're minimizing it, and the goal is to get rid of it. Now, for the first don't, this is going to ruffle some feathers, I know that, and not all of you are going to agree with me, which is totally fine. But in my experience, I would suggest you don't have a yard sale. I know. Don't shoot the messenger. This is just my experience. But here's the thing. I have had multiple yard sales, and while they can be fun and especially rewarding when, in my situation, a lot of the stuff you didn't pay for, it's more time consuming than you think. Without having done one, you may think it's just like one day in your yard or in your garage, chilling there, scrolling on your phone or playing on your Game Boy or whatever, and people are coming in and just dropping money in your lap and walking away with the stuff you don't want to own. Well, sour news for you, Jack. It's more than just one day. From the ones that I've done, it's almost an entire day in advance setting up for it. And I don't even put prices on my things. I just make sure they're clean and display them nicely and put out tables everywhere and let people make me offers, and I'll pretty much take whatever they offer. But even with all of that, it takes an entire day to set it up, and then you got to get up early in the morning and go out and put those signs there and be ready. Once you close it down, you've still got to put everything away and then find some way to donate the remainder. So we're talking like 2 solid days at least, and that's not taking into account all of the space that you had everything stored in and the time that you spent putting things away and sorting and organizing. It's a lot. It takes quite a bit of energy, and even though I've averaged $350 and that's with stuff that I found, I don't think it's worth the time. I think the amount of stress and the fact that it has to happen on a weekend, and I live in a good neighborhood. I've talked to lots of people who do not get the same kind of foot traffic that I do. This is just my suggestion. I don't think a yard sale is time well spent. Your mileage may vary. For number 2, definitely do give some stuff away. I know for me, I end up with emotional attachments and memories to a lot of the items that I've been using for a long time, and I want to see them go and continue their life in the hands of somebody who will appreciate them. Otherwise, I could just throw everything out, and that's not really the point. So giving stuff away, like, you might have specific friends that you know could use this or that, or you can put them on Facebook groups. Posting items for free in these places often works out great because you know it's going to somebody who actually has a need for it because they drove all the way to your house to pick it up. And that's the big advantage. You just had to take a picture, they came and grabbed it, and now it's gone and it's in the hands of someone who appreciates it. The one downside is a lot of these free groups are populated by people who are just scavenging to find things that they can sell for a profit. And while I find that totally relatable, it's not necessarily what you want when your goal was to give your items away to someone who would use them. Personally, it doesn't bother me that much. If they want to take the time to sell it for the $5 that they can get for it, go for it. When it comes to larger items like furniture, those can be more difficult to donate and move along, so you can just put them out in the alley or on the curb with a big sign that says free on them, and depending on your area, it'll probably be gone that same afternoon. I would suggest covering them in plastic or something, because if they're not, or if it happens to rain that afternoon, well, it's just going to get ruined. Now, of course, the success in this method does kind of depend on the quality and condition, but more on that later. Number 2 for the don'ts, and this may sound like backpedaling, but trust me on this one, don't downsize, donate, or get rid of important stuff. I'm talking about a very small category of things, so don't stress out. You're not going to rethink everything and put it all back. You probably don't need to hang on to every shirt your kiddo ever wore, but of course it makes sense to have maybe a scrapbook album with some photos and their first lock of hair and like their little baby booty shoes, or whatever makes you happy to hang on to. You're allowed to have a few mementos and little emotional what's-its, that's fine. Other important items that you might regret getting rid of are less emotional but more practical, things like seasonal items. So maybe you don't get a lot of snow, but that doesn't mean you won't need those gloves again. In my area, we don't get rain basically ever. We get maybe 3 days worth of rain, but I still hang on to my rain gear. I have a rain shell and rain pants because there will come a day when that is important, and I'll feel kind of silly if I got rid of it because I was just trying to make space and I wasn't currently using it. So be realistic about things that you're probably going to need to use again. Quick tip on how to know whether it's truly an important memory or not. What would you save in a fire? Just keep it in mind. Now, number 3 on the definitely donate. Yes, I mean, it's kind of what this video is about, but more specifically, donate to different areas, different places, different outfits that can use the things that you are getting rid of. It would be all too easy to just take absolutely everything from the pile, load it into your vehicle, and then go drive it to the thrift store. And while that works just fine, there are different outfits that actually need various things you may not realize. Your local animal shelter, for example. People often don't think of animal shelters when they're donating stuff, but they have a constant need for blankets to make bedding, and they are happy to accept things that are maybe lower quality, doesn't quite meet the condition that makes them sellable in a thrift store, are still perfectly usable for bedding for the many animals that show up there. Not only bedding and blankets, but materials as well. So if you've got a bunch of fabric that you're getting rid of, call your animal shelter. They might need it. Habitat for Humanity's The Restore can take all sorts of materials that typically thrift stores are not really able to sell. Things like construction materials or renovation materials. They're also a great place to take furniture because oftentimes thrift stores don't have the space for furniture, but The Restore has a huge floor for specifically that. So that might be a great outlet if you've got some decent pieces. And you'll get a tax write-off. Your local homeless shelter is another excellent place to support, but they don't have a lot of floor space and they can't just take everything. So this one, it's really important to give them a call before heading down because they don't want you to just show up with garbage bags full of clothing. They don't need all of your clothing. Items they frequently do need are non-perishable food items, toiletries, things like toothbrushes and soaps and shampoos and feminine hygiene products. Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, does it? As well as clothing and shoes. But this is the sticky part. They need specific clothing and shoes. So you call ahead and ask them what they need because it changes seasonally. In the winter, obviously they're going to need boots, gloves, and winter jackets. In the summer, they'll need specific things as well. They can give you a better idea. And they pretty much always need clean, new socks and underwear. So I know you probably don't have a lot of new socks and new underwear that you're getting rid of, but that's the kind of stuff they need. On to number 3 on the don'ts, and this is very personal, but I think other people might be able to relate. Please don't remove physical media from their cases. I'm talking about CDs, I'm talking about DVDs, I'm talking about Blu-rays. I get it, you like having your collection, but you're trying to save space or you're moving into a smaller place. Don't take the discs out, throw away the case and the album art and just like put them into a folder. I know a lot of people do this, that's why this is a personal thing, but when you do that, you are completely eliminating any value that printing may have in the secondary market or in the future. And I understand a lot of people are buying these movies and these CDs for their own personal enjoyment, so they're not really thinking about whether it has any value after them. But I personally wanted to reduce the size of my game collection when I was young. So all of my Game Boy games, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, all through those, I was a big handheld gamer. I threw out all of the boxes because it just didn't mean anything. I kept the manuals for a little while, but eventually threw those out too because all I needed was the little cartridge. And yeah, those items are all worth significantly more if they still have that. I find a lot of stacks of DVD cases, stacks of CD cases in bins, and they have beautiful album art and they have like wonderfully printed manuals with all sorts of neat information and add-ins, and it's just a pet peeve. Like, you're ruining it. Don't do it. As an alternative to saving space, because let's be honest, keeping the disc and tossing the rest of it is just a half measure, and eventually you're still gonna wish you had even less stuff. Make a digital copy. There are tons of programs out there that'll let you rip the CD or the DVD so you can have a hard drive full of all of your movies, and they're easier to access, and you can just like click through them. If you're trying to save space, that's the way to go. Now let's move right along to number 4 on the do list, and this one I think is fantastic and can really help save a lot of people, stress about not having enough time or not knowing where to go or like what they'll take and what they won't. This one's great. Call for a pickup. There are tons of charities that are so happy to come and pick up stuff directly from your house. I know a couple in Canada are Moms Canada, Diabetes Canada, and Habitat for Humanity. All 3 of those you can call and they will schedule a time, or you can just like bag the stuff up and put it on your porch and they'll come get it. It's so easy. In fact, I might actually do that because I have quite a bit of stuff. And those ones are just Canada. I know there's a ton of the same sorts of things in the States. Trust me, do a Google search. So simple. Number 4 on the don't. Don't. Please don't donate your garbage. Be honest with what the condition and the quality of the items you're looking at are, because your stuff is not so precious that somebody else should put the time and effort into repairing it or washing it or what have you. Just throw it out. That's your responsibility. You can't just like donate all of your torn, stained clothing or your like waterlogged, beaten up furniture, broken kids' toys, puzzles missing half their pieces. Like, thrift stores and charities have to throw out a huge amount of stuff that is just way beyond repair and nobody will ever buy. And places have to pay for their garbage removal. So when you're donating a bunch of stuff that you really should have just thrown out, you're actually doing the reverse of helping. You're costing that thrift store or that charity money and manpower, because they have to deal with all of that junk that I don't know. I don't know why people do it. Just be honest with yourself and don't use charities as your personal garbage disposal. One other small point. I worked in a value village for a little while, and I don't know why this was a surprise or why I ever thought otherwise, but these places do not have laundry facilities, so it's really important that you wash the things that the clothing that you're going to donate. Ideally in, a scent-free laundry detergent, but I'm not going to be super picky here. They need to be clean when they're donated, because they are not getting washed when they're there. Also, if you're buying clothing from a thrift store, you probably should wash it. Now, the fifth and final do. This one is something I learned with a little research project I was doing for a video recently, and I know a lot of people, especially down in the States, are not going to agree with this one because they have better options, but electronics, just take them to an electronics drop-off bin. That still feels ridiculous to say because I make money from scrap metal, and I've seen tons of people making plenty of money from scrapping tablets, phones, computers, all sorts of stuff. They can just bring it to their scrapyard. But here in Canada, we can't really do that. And I worked really hard trying to find all of the possible options that an individual has to get money from their e-waste, their electronic scrap. There's nothing going on in Canada for small individuals at this time. But if you take your electronics to those drop-off bins, they do go to places where people refurbish them and test them and maybe repair them and then return them to the market at discount prices while taking the profits to help support other recycling ventures. Check, call, find one in your local area because they're worth supporting. And to finish it off with my fifth and final don't, this one's quite a simple one. Don't drop stuff off after hours. It's annoying. You need to ring the doorbell, ring the buzzer on the back door and actually hand it to somebody, because if you just put stuff behind the thrift store, it's probably going to get rained on, or animals are going to get into it, or simple point, speaking from experience, I'm kind of speaking to myself more than anything, because obviously I would love to just drop a box every now and again whenever it's convenient, but if they're not there, they don't like it. And that's it. That's all. That's Minimalism Tips Volume 2. Where does it all go? It's something that's been on my mind quite a bit, so I've kind of been researching and taking notes on my own anyway, and I figured, you know what? Someone else might have a use for this kind of information. Speaking of which, I hope this has been helpful for you. I know this is not a complete guide, so for things that I missed or tips that you found that other people might find helpful, please write them in the comments below, because I would love for this to be a more complete resource, and it's the community that really makes this what it is. So thank you for being a part of that community. Thank you so much for checking this out. If you liked it, subscribe, let me know how you felt, and leave it better than you found it. Keep doing the thing.